Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's talk. My name is Santi, and today we're talking about compost. From kitchen to garden, practical composting techniques for the urban gardener. I'm guessing some of you probably have heard about compost, have tried to make compost before. Maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, maybe you're still trying, or I don't know. I wouldn't think if you're a master of composting, you would be here. But anyway, today we're gonna go through some of the details, how I make compost, how I teach compost, and hopefully you're gonna find good ideas and strategies to make your compost work and to start one if you haven't yet. But first, we're gonna talk about permaculture because for me it's really important to tell you what permaculture is, and maybe you'll find the way to apply it in other parts of your life, or at least you know now the word and you go and do your own research. Here we're just gonna talk slightly about it. So permaculture started in Australia, and it was these two guys, David Holmgren and Bill Mollison. Initially, it was mostly Bill Mollison, and they were traveling around and noticing that there was a lot of garbage in different cities around the world, that there was a lot of deforestation in different cities around the world, and flooding, erosion, so many things that were affecting nature and therefore also affecting humans. So they started thinking about this system that eventually they call permaculture, which is just like a mix of different practices and concepts that other cultures have. So imagine they would just go around and go to China and see how they handle water. And from that, they would go maybe to Russia and learn how they do natural building. But then when they would go to I don't know, Italy, they would see a different way of doing natural building, and then they would start getting like the best of each culture, putting everything together in a way that people could study and replicate, with the objective of taking care of nature and taking better care of ourselves also as individuals and also as society. So what is permaculture? Let's go into the principles, and this is the base for me. Permaculture has to have these three principles, which are earth care, people care, and fair share. Again, earth care, people care, and fair share. So why are these important? When you have any project, and this if you think about it, they can apply to any project. You could have a taxi company and you could earth care. Maybe your taxis have natural gas. They're working on natural gas. You have people care because you treat your workers well, like you pay them the right wage, but also you train them to treat the customers in a good way. And then fair share, let's say one day a month you get your taxes to help in some social cause, to move people that maybe wouldn't have the means to do it. Maybe have some kids moving to the kids museum so they can have some fun, and maybe they wouldn't have the chance to do this. So this would show us an example of people care, earth care, fair share. So permaculture can be applied to many things. And also we have these other principles that again would apply to anything, from composting to planting trees to making a rainwater catchment system, so many things. But today we're talking mostly about produce no waste, right? Because today we're talking about compost and how can we design systems that the output actually feeds a new input. Because right now we have a lot of problems with garbage. But before going into these details, let me just show you some permaculture examples. This is a farm in Ireland, if I'm not wrong. It's just a couple acres, and they have chickens, goats, sheep. They produce milk, eggs, meat. They even host parties sometimes. They're so organized. If you're really into these topics, they even have books that explain all their processes, and it's really, really nice. Also, we have Green in the Desert. This is in Jordan, and you can see from before and after how it used to be a desert, and now it's greener. Well, even this picture, it's even from like 2014. So if you look at Green in the Desert project now, you're gonna see it's even greener, bigger trees in a bigger area also. So this is Green the Desert, another example. Lowe's Plateau, this is in China. And for many years, Lowe's Plateau was overworked. They were doing mining, deforestation, they were getting stones, sand, raising animals, and this led to a very eroded and almost dead soil. But with time and with a lot of professionals, not just on permaculture, but other areas, they managed to restore it. And this picture is also an old picture. So if you look for Lowe's Plateau, or if at some point you have the chance to go, you'll see the big difference. And for me, it's amazing what we can do through permaculture, through learning some principles and applying them, working as a team towards the goal of restoring nature. Now we have, this one is in Costa Rica, Mama Verde. And she's actually, when she was gonna have her kid, she thought like, man, I have all this garden and I'm just working a corporate job and getting so stressed. So I want to have a good garden, a nice space where my daughter can grow healthy. And so she started a garden. She take most of the grass out of the garden and started making terraces and planting a bunch of things. She's in Atenas. If you live nearby or you want to visit, just look for Mama Verde on Instagram, Facebook. Then we have Finca Urbana Autosuficiente Pico Blanco. This is in Escazú. And this guy, Don Hugo, it's amazing because like 40 years ago, he thought, wow, the cities are growing so fast. I just want to live in the mountains. And he went to the mountain of Pico Blanco in Escazú and started building his house little by little, but always taking care of nature. So he has compost, biodigesters, a lot of trees, a lot of vegetables. He's making even this hydroponic system, but it's actually an organic hydroponic system, because I don't know if you know, but hydroponic systems are not organic because they're using chemical fertilizers. But this one is completely organic from the waste materials that he has in his house. He's doing chileras, like with hot peppers, salads, dehydrated, cakes, bread, yogurt, kefir, kombucha, so many things. It's amazing. Also, if you're around, look for Finca Urbana Autosuficiente Pico Blanco near Escazú. It's an amazing project to visit, and Don Hugo is a really wise man that I'm sure you will learn a lot from him. Well, here's some examples. He also receives groups. He has a seed bank where he shares seeds. Overall, an amazing project, and here in Costa Rica. Now, what we were talking, and we'll go through some of the details, but what is the comparison? Chemical fertilizers, those are the ones you buy in a bag, and it's like little blue balls or red balls, orange balls, they're different colors, white balls, or like little stones, they look like, versus organic. Well, first, the problem of chemical fertilizers, it's that they're based on the petrol industry, like the big oil companies. So you have to mine a lot to get a lot of these chemicals that they're going to put in this bag. So that affects the nature like a big amount. And also it's producing greenhouse gases. They're also toxic to handle or ingest. If you work with kids in your garden and you're using these ones and they put it in their mouth, they eat it, they could have like health problems. Versus compost that you could eat it if you want, and maybe you could have like a stomach ache or something, but you're not gonna have like a big problem in general. Also, chemical fertilizers create soil depletion, because when you bring these chemical fertilizers, they might feed the plant initially, but they're not a good environment for all the life in the soil. So life starts decaying in the soil, like little bugs and microorganisms start dying, because this is not the way that they can eat. Maybe for the plants they can absorb it, but like the animals start being left with any food. So they die, and when they die, there's nothing moving in the ground, and therefore the soil compacts. When it compacts, air cannot go through, or water, and then you have very eroded, compacted soil where nothing grows. Now, the compost, on the other hand, it's doing the opposite. It's bringing life to the soil. It's bringing food for all these microorganisms and little critters, bugs, ants, millipedes, and those all can enjoy that food and move around and bring fertility, bring air, help with drainage of the water, and this helps plants. It's earth friendly, like compost. It's part of it's like soil. It's part of nature, so it's helping nature. And it also, when it rains, compost can hold a lot of water. It's like a sponge that when it gets the water around, it just like absorbs it, and then when it's sunny, it lets the plants use that water. So when you use compost, you actually have to use less water. Your plants are healthier. Your soil, it's better. It's full of life, and at the end, it's free. Like, we have this amazing thing that we can do, that if we don't use it, 40 to 60% of garbage that we throw on in the landfills in Costa Rica and in other countries, a pretty wide international like average, from 40 to 60% of garbage, it's compostable. So imagine that landfills would be 40 to 60% smaller. That instead of taking 2 bags of garbage each week, you would take maybe just 1 or even less if you recycle. We were like a family of 4 or 5, and instead of, we went from taking like 3 bags twice a week to taking like a little bag once a week, or even once every 2 weeks. Now we recycle and we do compost, and we're really mindful over the things we buy. So I think we have a lot of power to change things. If you start making compost, the beginning might be a little difficult. It might be frustrating because it stinks, because it doesn't look well, because it's taking too long. But anything we learn takes time. I don't think, or I imagine that when you got to a new job, you had to meet new people, learn new processes, study new topics, and at the beginning you didn't know where people were, or how things worked. But with time you learn, and then it becomes easy. With compost is the same. You practice, you fail sometimes, it's frustrating sometimes, you get angry sometimes, but at some point, for me at least, knowing that 40% or 60% is not going to the landfills, but it's going to the fertility of my garden and the soil web of life, it's so important. It's so cool. And because I've been doing it, in my case, I've been doing it like for 12 years now, it comes almost automatic. And when I have a problem, I already know what to do to fix it. If I go to someone else's compost, I see the compost, I'm like, oh, I know what's wrong here. As well as I know maybe you, in the things you know that you have a lot of experience. If you would go to another company and you see an error, something that could be improved, you can easily think how to solve it. So the same goes for compost. So let's go back to here. Now, what makes a successful compost? And I'm going to talk here on patterns, not recipes. Because what happens when you want to make a cake and you have all the ingredients but butter, and the recipe says you need butter. If you're not good at cooking, then you're not going to do anything, because you're going to think, I don't have all the ingredients, so I cannot do it. With compost, I want to show you elements that are gonna make a compost successful, no matter if you're in the North Pole, in south of Argentina, in Brazil, in France. It doesn't matter where you are, the temperatures or the material that you're using as the source of your compost, you should be able to have a good compost. Sometimes it's gonna take longer, sometimes it's gonna be faster, but these factors for a successful compost, I can assure you that they're going to help you a lot to achieve it. So what are these? We have air, water or humidity, temperature, and carbon-nitrogen ratio. This one can seem a little complicated, intimidating, but don't worry. I'll let you know examples and how it can be really easy for you. So air, humidity, temperature, and carbon-nitrogen ratio. Let's see now what happens with this. So temperature first. When you have a compost that is the right temperature, you're gonna get rid of the bacteria you don't want in your compost, and you're gonna keep the good one, the ones that are gonna actually help your plants be healthier and produce more. What happens if you go too high, if it's too hot? Then you're gonna actually kill some of that bacteria, the good bacteria that you wanted to keep. And you're gonna still keep some of the minerals, but actually some of the nutrients in your soil are gonna evaporate because it's too hot. More than 70%, it's going to be too hot. Good ranges are 45 to 60 Celsius. But then what happens if it's too low? If it's like 0 degrees or minus? If you live in a place, I don't know, the north of in Canada, Ireland, we were talking before. So what happens is that the compost is gonna like stay. It's not gonna process. Because imagine when it's a cold day and you're in your bed and you wake up and it's like, it's so cold outside, so I'd rather stay here in the bed for a while. So bacteria, microorganisms think similarly. If it's too cold, they're not gonna move a lot, and then a compost might take really long. The good thing is when the compost freezes at some point, if you get to summer and it melts or unfreezes, it's gonna go way faster than before. But during the winter, you're gonna have to wait a little more. Now, humidity. Normally, compost that smell bad because they're too humid, and then air cannot go through. And when you don't have air, then you start growing anaerobic bacteria, which is bacteria that don't need air to live. And these bacteria produce smelly gases. And that's where when you go to a compost and you're like, it smells really bad. So probably it's because it has too much humidity. There's other reasons, but what I see the most is there's too much food scraps. You ate some watermelon and you just throw the whole watermelon, and you eat a lot of fruits constantly, and then you have a really humid compost that is not allowing air to go through and to ventilate, to aerate the material, and then it smells bad. So too much humidity, it's gonna smell bad because you're gonna have anaerobic bacteria. But if it's too dry, then what's gonna happen is that it's gonna go slow. Imagine a pile of dry leaves. It doesn't compost fast. The process is really slow because bacteria need humidity to like slide and move from one leaf to the other, or from the watermelon to the orange peel to the leftover rice. So you do need a certain amount of humidity. And one way to know this, when the process is already like halfway, is you can take like a fist of the soil, of the material that is being processed, and you push it really hard. And if it drips a lot, it means that it's too humid. Probably it smells bad, or it smells strong, and you're gonna have to put dry material. But on the other hand, if you press it, nothing happens. You open your hand and you can like clean easily. It's almost dust. Then it's too dry. The good way is when you press it, you open the hand and it's slightly dirty, and you find like a little ball, or like it's not falling apart, but also it's not super muddy. So again, too humid, it's gonna smell bad. Too dry, it's gonna go slow. Now, carbon nitrogen. Carbon nitrogen, let's see it this way. You're gonna have all the carbon. It's mostly the things that are dry and or brown. And nitrogen are the things that are green in general and or wet. So what about bread? Bread can be brown and also it can be dry. Another way to know if it's carbon or nitrogen is if you press the ingredient. If you press, for example, watermelon, it's going to drip. So that's nitrogen. But if you press an eggshell, it's not going to drip. Well, I mean, if it's just the eggshell, it's not going to drip. So you can put it on the carbon. And that's like a simple way of knowing. Brown, dry goes to carbon. Wet and green goes to nitrogen. How much do you want? You want visually kind of half and half. But if you go a little more with dry, it's even better. You'd rather have your compost too dry than too wet, because too wet, it smells bad. The process doesn't go well. But too dry, you're going to just go slower. But the process is going to be okay. Now, the particle size. This one we didn't have in those four elements, but this is not actually to have a successful compost necessarily, it's just to have a faster compost. So the smaller the particle, the faster it's going to go. But wait, don't make it like a paste, because then what happens? Air cannot go through. And if air cannot go through, what happens? It stinks because we have anaerobic bacteria. So you do want small particle, but don't go too small. An example that you see there that is like 1 centimeter, 1 cubic centimeter, it's like a nice size. And if you're not into centimeters or like measurements, or you're not good at that, just think like a little piece of your finger. Like that's a good size. And then you mix it with sawdust, with wood chips. And actually, now that we're gonna go to the in a while we're gonna go to the compost styles, I'm gonna tell you which ones work best for beginners. But one thing that I want to go through, or that I want to go back to before continuing, it's the soil ecology. The fact that you're putting food in the soil is gonna bring, and I'm not saying to put the food scraps directly to your garden, but I'm saying when you make compost, that's gonna be food that is gonna attract animals, insects, worms, and this is really good for the soil. This is what is actually creating a good structure, a living soil that is not just good for the plants and for the harvest that you're going to eventually have, but it's even sequestering carbon, for example, and it's creating more life around it also, supporting the web of life. So that's a big reason why for me compost is so important. It's not just about saving money or not throwing garbage to the landfill. It's also that we are restoring the life, the life in the planet Earth. Now, in terms of ingredients, some people are confused, or some people get that you shouldn't put citrus or pineapple or cooked food or meat. But what I tell them is that whenever something used to have life, it can have life again through the compost. Now, if you're a beginner, you might want to start with the beginner things, just fruits, skins, some grass when you cut the grass, when you prune some plants. Those are easy and they're gonna work pretty well. But if you're already more advanced and you like to live on the edge, you can start putting other things: seafood, dairy products, cooked food, toilet paper. We're even going to talk about toilet paper and poop. But this is only for people that are advanced, that you feel comfortable. You're like, okay, I've been doing this for some years. I know how to handle it. I know how to make it work. If you don't want to go there, please just stay in beginner. If you're a beginner, don't put poop in your compost, or don't put meat in your compost, because it's going to stink. And you could even reproduce bacteria that could be dangerous. So if you want just to stay in beginner, it's pretty good. That's still going to take a big amount of food compost out of the landfills, and you're still going to produce some really nice quality compost. Things for sure you shouldn't put: paint, wood, painted wood or varnished wood, drugs, pills. It's not really good to put pills because they have so many chemicals and hormones and things that are going to disrupt not just the plants, but then these can be absorbed by the plants and then you end up eating them. Fuel, remainders of chemicals, none of this should go to the compost, no matter how much experience you have. Let's just stay with edibles. Well, toilet paper is not edible, but you get what I mean. Now, compost styles. And these, maybe you have tried some of these. Let's see. What about Takakura? Takakura, it's a really good compost for small spaces. It's just a little box with a fermented mix of soil, cardboard, sawdust, rice husk, some other things. Here we're going to see some of them. And there you go. And with this, you have this little box that we see there. We're going to see some parts not with volume, so don't worry about the volume. Let's see what they're putting in the compost. If you see here, you can see that there's, the sawdust, the rice husk. Let's see more. The leaves also. They're going to mix it, and all of this is going to create this fermented mix that is going to then eat your food scraps. And these can be ready in 2 to 3 weeks, and it's pretty easy to make. If you go if you're on Facebook and you live in Costa Rica, you can go to the La Red de Huertos Urbanos de Costa Rica on Facebook, and you can ask, actually, because a lot of people that already have Takakura, they can just share some of that, and then you can start working from there. Instead of buying or creating new from scratch, you can just exchange with someone and start your own. So this is a good one that I suggest. You can find it as Ecolur, as you can see there, Ecolur. Or you see it all there, yeah. So that's how you can find it on Instagram, on Facebook. Now we have the vermicompost, and the vermicompost is with worms. And with this one, you do want to be careful with the ingredients, because worms don't like citrus and they don't like onions or garlic. Not a lot. What's going to happen is that it's going to be slower. And that if you put a lot, like say you put the whole box full of orange peels, they're probably going to die or escape. So with vermicompost is the one that you might want to be more careful with the ingredients you put in. That doesn't mean it doesn't work. It's just I would say it's medium, not beginner, but medium. And in this case, you can just, I guess, either throw away the citrus or use them somewhere else in a different compost, or just bury them on your garden if you have a garden. There's other options. But eventually, if you have enough worms, like if you put 2 or 3, it's okay. I'm saying if you put a lot, it's not good. Like if you did the day of the orange juice and you invited 40 friends and you have like 3 bags of orange peel, don't put them inside. But if it's just like the daily orange juice in the morning, it's okay. Now the compost tumblers, we have some of these, actually prettier than these, and we sell them, we ship them to anywhere in the country. And these people like it because you can just turn it once, turn it twice, and it's ready. That's all the maintenance you need to put. Well, a part of the carbon nitrogen material, right? But for me, it's one of the easiest. If you don't have a lot of time, maybe if you don't have a big garden, it's one of the easiest ways to produce compost. The vaca digestora, this one started in Colombia, and it's basically, you see this structure that it's like a square made of wood. You can make it with other material, but this is some recycled wood, let's say. And you start putting it from the ground. It starts from the ground. As you can see this first picture, you put some thick wood so it can aerate from under. You don't want all this material compacted against the soil, but you want some aeration that can come under. So that's why you would put some wood, some branches, and then you start filling it, putting like grass or leaves around, and the food scraps in the center, and then you cover this. You always have to cover, because you don't want food scraps just in the air, because then they attract animals. And then you compact it, and people even dance. If you look for vaca digestora, you're gonna see people dancing and singing as they're push and compact the compost pile, which I think is nice. Like if you're into community, if you have kids, this is a pretty nice way of making compost. And then we have the lasagna compost. This one, it's layers: green, dry, earth or soil, green, dry, soil, green, dry. You keep going as a lasagna. But these ones are more for farms that are producing more material, because you need to start with at least 1 cubic meter, or around 1 cubic meter, to have a good process. Because if you do just a little lasagna compost, it's not going to work as good. It's not going to heat up, and then you're going to end up taking a long time, or just bringing a lot of flies and animals. And now this last one, that is the compost toilet. This one, some people, you might not be ready for this. Like this might be out of your, like the ideas you have for today. But compost toilet, let's do some math here. So we have a regular toilet. It's gonna use, let's take the same example, around 12 liters, right? 12 liters per flush. And Andrea was telling me that on average, we can flush the toilet 7 times a day. So now we have 12 times 7, 84. So what's that 84? That's liters. 84 is the liters per, let's go bigger there. So we have 84. But that's just one day. So let's multiply it by a year, which is 365. And now we have 3,660 liters in a year. So this number, 3,660, are the liters of water that, let's say, maybe Andrea is using per year. And this is not just any water. Let's make this clear, because this is drinkable water. And if you have had the chance, or you actually live in a place where they don't have drinkable water, where you have to buy water, there's many places in Costa Rica where people even have to walk miles and hours and even days. A lot of countries in Africa, they need to walk days to get water that is even contaminated. And here in Costa Rica, we just open the tap and we have water. Like, it's amazing. For me, it's amazing that we decided at some point that it was a good idea to poop in water. So let's come back to the math here. So we have this amount per year, 3,660. Now, at some point, someone told me that at least 1 liter per day, I should drink 1 liter per day. And actually, this is a good reminder for you to drink water right now if you haven't drank enough today. Like, being able to drink water this easily, it's a privilege. Not everyone in the world can just fill their water bottle at about 5 meters just in any tab. That's why I want to talk about compost toilet as one of the compost styles. And this one is especially good if you will have a farm, if you have like property in the middle of nowhere and maybe you don't have drinkable water. So having a compost toilet, it's a big solution to manage your own waste. Okay, 3,660. I was saying we need at least minimum 1 liter per day. But in the talk, we had 14 people. So let's divide it by 1 liter, and we still have the same number, obviously, 30,660. But now let's divide it by 14. That was the amount of people that we had in the talk. So 2,190. And what does this mean? What this means to this number, it's the amount of days that each one of the people that were in the talk could drink 1 liter of water. So let me say this again. We took the water per day that someone could use in a toilet. We multiplied by the number of days of the year. We had 30,660, and now we're dividing it by 14, which is the amount of people that could drink 1 liter per day. So now how much is this? So that would be 6 years of water, but not 6 years of water for one person. It would be 6 years of water for 14 people that drink 1 liter per day. So imagine that one person is using the water that 14 people could drink in 6 years. That's a lot. Like, it's a lot. And when you think about the impact that you can have, and you're like, it's just me, like, what am I going to change in the world? Well, you could change that 14 people could drink water for 6 years, at least 1 liter a day. And I think that's a big impact. If instead of taking 3 garbage bags, big garbage bags to the street for the garbage truck to take, you just take half a bag, I think that's a big impact. And maybe in the moment it doesn't seem like, but the impact is not just what you're doing, but it's what people see you doing, and they're like, wow, how come he just has half a bag and I'm taking like 3 bags? And some people even feel ashamed, and they're like, well, it's not possible that I'm producing so much garbage. And then they get inspired. Or maybe they go to your farm and they see a compost toilet. It is the first time. Like, this might be the first time for you listening about the compost toilet, and you might go back to your house and think, wow, I never thought that I was using so much water, that I was pooping in drinkable water. It never crossed my mind that it would be 6 years for 14 people in 1 year of me pooping the water. And this is not for you to feel guilty. It's just for you to see the opportunities we have to change things in our daily life. Like, we throw garbage every day and we poop every day. And those are 2 simple things where we could have a positive impact. Now, let's go back to the presentation. So now you have the compost styles. How do you use that compost? Imagine you finally get to the final point. You have your result. You're happy. Where do you use it? So this is actually extra. This we didn't see with the group, but I want to share it with you. I hope someone sees it and like it makes sense for you. When you have a farm or a project or a garden or a house, you have different sectors, and one of those is going to be wind. So you never want to put your compost where the wind is coming, because then everyone in the house is going to smell your compost when you're mixing it or when it goes wrong. So you want to go around your property and feel where the airflow is coming, the wind currents are coming, where the water is also, because you might need water when it's too dry. You also want to know where the kitchen is, so you can put it close to the kitchen. That's actually called in permaculture zones. Now we're talking about sectors, so let's not get carried away. Sectors. Another sector you want to check is the wildlife, because if you put a nice, delicious compost next to the wildlife, you're probably going to get some raccoons, some possums, some other animals that smell it, and they're like, something's happening here. I want to try this. So look at the sectors. Where do you have the sun? Where do you have the wind? Where do you have wild animals? What other sectors could apply for a better location of your compost? And now the zones that I was talking about, you want to put the compost as close as possible, that it makes it practical, but far enough that it doesn't make it uncomfortable. So you don't want to have your compost pile next to your kitchen, right? Unless it's next outdoors. You're indoors and the compost is outdoors next to the kitchen. For me, it's good to have it close, because if not, you have to walk all through the house with the compost that it might be dripping sometimes when you take it from the food scraps from the kitchen to the compost pile. That's not really the best thing. So if you're able to put it closer to your kitchen, I'd say do that. But if there's not other option, like right now, my kitchen is like in the middle of the house and the compost is on the back. So I do need to go through some rooms to get to the back of the garden. And now, how to use it? How much to use? Well, think that when you have a small plant, like a newborn seedling, you want to put just a sprinkle around. If you put too much, it's gonna probably kill the plant. Imagine like giving a full gallo pinto to a baby, a newborn baby. It's not gonna work. It's not able to process that amount or that complexity. So just sprinkle a little, that should be enough. But now if you have like a bigger plant, maybe 30 centimeters, 40, maybe even a bush, you can put some shovelfuls around the bush. Now, when you have a tree, it's different. Imagine that the branches of the tree are this, like the edge of my sombrero. So you want where the water falls to the ground. So let's say around here, you want to have your compost. You don't want to have the compost next to the trunk, because then the tree is not gonna be able to really use it, because the roots that are closer to the trunk are more to hold the tree, but the roots that go all the way to the branches are the ones that are absorbing nutrients. So you want to maybe even dig a trench around the tree and put the compost there all around the drip line of the tree, and cover with mulch. That's really important. Always cover it with mulch. Don't let the compost just out there in the sun, because it's gonna burn. It's gonna lose nutrients, and then you're gonna lose part of your work. There's not gonna be any other like bigger problems in general, but you're gonna lose part of your work. So try to cover it. Now, main questions, facts. Does it smell bad? Has a loads of flies. What can I do? There's a lot of leaking. So that means it's too humid. You need to put dry material. And as I said, in these compost tumblers that we sell, we give them with a bag of wood chips that you can mix and then balance that humidity, that carbon nitrogen ratio. In general, when it smells bad, it's because you put too much nitrogen material. Do you see strange worms? The first times you see worms, you might be like, oh, this looks disgusting. But actually, some of these worms are actually beneficial. They're the black soldier fly. They're like white, like this size, like the size of the width of my eye, but thinner. They might be actually helping you. If there's a lot and they're small, it's not the best. But those that are like this size and white in general, you can search for black soldier fly images, and you're gonna see. In many cases, these are the ones you get. Now, where do you get dry material from? Well, you just go to a place where, well, in case of the tumblers, we sell it. We sell like the bags of that, and that can last for many months. But if you want to get it on your own, you just go to a place where they work with wood, not varnished, not painted, natural wood. Maybe they do furniture, and you can ask for the wood chips or for the sawdust. In many cases, they might even give it away for free. So just maybe look around, locate where the stores are, or where there's like places where they work with wood, and you can find there. And that's where I get it. So I do not have a garden. What do I do with my compost if you don't have a garden? Well, you can share it with your neighbors. I'm sure there's someone around you that does have plants that can use that soil. And if not, you can just go to the park nearby and use it in the park. I'm sure a lot of the plants and trees that are in parks, they really would like to have some compost, because I think they don't get a lot of care. At least around this area where I am, the trees get planted and they get forgotten. So if you bring some compost, I'm sure it's going to make them happy. And well, any other questions, you can just shoot me an email. You can ask me also there. You can also look for me on the web, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. I'm there. Just shoot me a text, send me some pictures, and also make sure to join the Huertos Urbanos CR, the group on Facebook, Huertos Urbanos CR, where we can share seeds, share plants, tips, the Takakura compost that we were talking about. So many things that I'm sure you could that could be beneficial. And also, it's just nice when you're starting to just have company, or when you have questions, when some things are not going well, that you have someone to ask, or just to get support with. So that would be the presentation for today. Thank you very much. I hope you start your compost, or now you feel motivated to continue with your compost, or to bring it back to life and continue using it. My name is Santi from Molinos Verdes de Moringa, la red de huertos urbanos here in Costa Rica, Urban Garden Network. And for the ones that are coming on Friday, I see you on Friday.